Hey guys, welcome to a new video here at Got It Tutorials. Since Cities Skylines 2 is coming out soon, and there will be so many cool new features and improvements compared to the first part, I thought I'd make a video about what I think are the best new features. So let's get started. One of the most annoying things about its predecessor, the constant manual building of the same chessboard city blocks, has finally been simplified in Cities Skylines 2. It seems that you can now easily build any size of street blocks within a few clicks using a street tool. I really have to say that this is one of the best of the quality of life changes ever in the game. But it gets even better. I guess you can now turn an intersection into a traffic circle with a single click. So I guess the days of monotonous and boring road building are finally over. And it continues directly with the probably most hated weakness of the first part: the traffic and especially the wayfinding AI behind it. This was unfortunately still very primitive in the first part, but this was more due to the circumstances of the development than to the hardware of that time. The developers of Cities Skylines were still a small studio with little financial capacity. That's why they decided to leave the traffic AI at this level, even though they knew that it could theoretically be better. It wasn't guaranteed that the game would be a success, and then the developers didn't want to and couldn't put so much time and resources into it. But today, it's different. Cities Skylines 2 is one of the most anticipated construction games of the last few years, if not of all time. The developers now have a lot more resources at their disposal than back then, and they seem to be using them. The new AI is now supposed to balance between the factors of travel time, route length, and economic factors like fuel consumption and ticket prices. This is much closer to reality than in the first part. And the fact that all these factors partly influence each other and constantly change also means that we will get a much more diverse and dynamic and generally more realistic traffic flow than in the first part. But now to something that was already good enough in the first part, but will be much better in Cities Skylines 2, which is the electricity system. In the first game, you built a power plant, and then connected it to the community with power poles. The power plants always produced the same amount of electricity, except for the dam. In Cities Skylines 2, this is no longer the case, especially with renewable power plants like solar fields and wind turbines, which now produce different amounts of electricity depending on the weather and time of year. But not only the power production fluctuates so, also the power consumption varies strongly between day and night and between the seasons. To compensate for these strong fluctuations, electricity can now be stored in huge batteries, even when there is a surplus. In addition, electricity can now be imported when there is a shortage and exported when there is a surplus. The way electricity is delivered to the people has also changed. The lines are now already built into the streets, but it now needs a kind of substation as an intermediate station between the power poles and the small lines in the streets. All these novelties should make electricity as a part of the game mechanics much more interesting than in the first part. Not only was traffic a big point of criticism in Cities Skylines 1, but the lack of diversity in the size of the buildings was also one of the main points of criticism. In fact, except for the European-style high-rises, there was virtually no real kind of middle-sized buildings, which always led to these strong contrasts between the city and the suburbs and ensured that you couldn't build a truly organic city. In addition, it was always strange, especially for Europeans, that the lower floors of high-density residential buildings do not also have stores, as it is more than common in Europe and many places in the world. Cities Skylines 2 finally breaks this rule and introduces medium and mixed zoning, allowing us to finally build organic and realistic cities. Now obviously most people won't have missed more micromanagement in the economy in Cities Skylines, but it's still something I'm looking forward to. Besides, if the developers are right, it will be optional anyway, and won't have a huge impact on the gameplay. It will probably be possible to tax certain goods or services more heavily in order to restrict them and subsidize other parts of the economy. There will be a huge range of goods and services to choose from. Of course, compared to SimCity, in Cities Skylines we already had big maps, and especially with the mods that let you unlock all parts of the map. Huge maps to build on. And I must admit that at least with these mods I never really had space problems. However, larger maps would not hurt. In Cities Skylines 2, we can now expect 3.3 times as large maps as in the first part, with around 48 square kilometers. I'm curious if I will ever fill such an area with an entire city. By the way, if you liked the video and are interested in more content about Cities Skylines 2, maybe you can leave a like or even a sub. That would make me really happy as a small channel. But enough begging, let's go on with the video. Well, to be honest, this point is more interesting for me as a YouTuber than for you, but the new cinematic camera will make it a lot easier to make great recordings for videos with features like keyframes, time and weather control, and many filters and lenses. In the first game, there were already cinematic cameras through mods, but they were not as good as the one in Cities Skylines 2 seems to be. It will certainly be exciting to see what great videos and screenshots people will make with them. As we wished for months ago, internet and especially mobile networks in the form of cell masts will finally make their way into Cities Skylines 2 as a kind of new infrastructure. It's really nice to see aspects like this or the middle zoning finally bringing the game more and more into a more realistic and real-world simulation. Whether tornadoes or trams, some of the old DLC content seems to have made it into the vanilla game of Cities Skylines 2. So maybe Cities Skylines 2 won't have so little content compared to the current status of Cities Skylines 1. For many, it was questionable whether the new part would be able to compete with its predecessor, which was overwhelmed with content thanks to the DLCs. I think that with small parts of the old DLCs in the vanilla game, they can reduce this content gap and therefore the competition well, if not make it completely irrelevant. Last but not least, I would like to mention one of the best new features, the new modular structure of public buildings. Whereas in the predecessor, for example, an elementary school could hold 300 students, and if there was more demand, you had to build another elementary school. It is now the case that you can simply expand the elementary school. This is of course particularly cool in terms of realism, since it is of course also in real life that a small city tends to expand existing infrastructure, such as schools as the city grows instead of building a completely new school. In addition, I can imagine that you can save a lot of space in your city. But that's it from my side for now. Now it's your turn. Write down your favorite new features in the comments below. Maybe you already have some ideas for tutorials I can make soon for Cities Skylines 2. Either way, feel free to write it in the comments. Thanks for watching and otherwise have a great day. Bye guys.